Welcome to this almost regular meeting of the WQI. It's those of you who came out on the winter evening. Tui, you're here, thank God. We did have a winter this year, so I appreciate everybody showing up here. The reason that we're here tonight is to sort of either reacquaint or in most cases acquaint everyone with the things that this board does. We reached out to you, the chairs of the HOAs, and for the main reason is so that you can help us help you. We find that our client list of people asking for help is not as great as we would like. And our repertoire of stuff that we do is greater than one might think. So the reason for this meeting is just to give everyone sort of an idea of what we can do to assist the various areas of Shelter Island. We have 3 board members here right now. It's Greg Toner, Tui Brayson. Betty Bishop is in Florida taking care of her mom, and she's online. And Julia Weisenberg. One thing that most people on Shelter Island can agree with of a hot button topic is water. I mean, I don't think there's anybody that wouldn't put that in the top 3. Shelter Island is particularly sensitive to water. Obviously, as we all know, we drink what is under the ground. We discharge what we drink back into the ground. And we all enjoy looking at all the water that surrounds us, without either the tidal wetlands being in great shape or the water that we drink being in great shape. The so-called golden goose might not survive. I mean, Shelter Island wouldn't be as a great a place to be if there was no water, either to look at or to drink. So, that's sort of how this committee evolved. It was its inception, I guess, was around, or the roots of its inception was legislation that was passed in 2016. I think Fred Thiel was one of the co-sponsors of it, and it was, specifically to help water quality. The wherewithal that Fred had envisioned for this is derived from the monies that come into the CPF fund, the 2% tax on property transfers. And of that money, 20% of it comes to the Water Quality Project Improvements Advisory Board. That's a mouthful, so most of us just say WQI. So it'll probably just, as we go forward, we'll probably just be saying WQI. This committee itself was formed at the tail end of 2017. And we were sort of thrust into this room here and said, okay, you're on this committee and here's sort of what you're supposed to do. And we spent the better part of 2 or 3 years figuring out what it was that we were supposed to do. We were meeting twice a month, trying to come up with protocols and ways of helping people. And the first kind of mandate that we were given by that town board at that time was to try to get the so-called innovative alternative septic systems in the ground. So we spent a lot of time trying to figure out the plan and the way that would be handled. And even to this day, it's an ever evolving process. And one that, to the person just looking at, the amount of paperwork that you are presented with, it can be a little overwhelming. But again, that's sort of why we're here, to let you know that, there is assistance available for people considering installing these innovative alternative systems. The function of them is mainly to remove nitrogen. The criteria that New York or the Suffolk County has is that it has to reduce it to no more than 19 milliliters. The systems that we have been seeing on Shelter Island, I think, do a little bit better job, in the 10 milliliters range. So it's a big difference from what you could have a brand new house with a conventional septic system, and it doesn't really perform any better than one that was installed in 1960, because you're still putting the same amount of nitrogen back into the ground. Nitrogen is bad for people, especially young people and old people. It's especially bad for spawning shellfish, and that's sort of why Suffolk County sort of got on board with this in the first place, because of the amount of septic systems in Suffolk County, which is probably, I think that it's probably like as many people in Suffolk County as, in many states. And the amount of septic systems, I believe, is like 74% of the houses in Suffolk County have septic systems, individual septic systems. So it was perceived that was a giant thing that needed to be fixed. So the county began this grant program themselves. The state sort of got on board with it, and they have their own grant that was available. And then I guess Fred Thiel and company got on board with, the local municipalities being able to have grants as well. So the way it stands now is that Shelter Island program allows for a base grant of $12,000 for a IA installation, $5,000 if you were to put in a pressurized shallow drain field, an additional $4,000 if you happen to have to move your well, which many times in an older system, and the way things were laid out in the past, your well could have been in the basement of your house, which is right off the bat, Suffolk County Health Department, no, they want you to get it out of there. And of course, they would love you to have a 150-foot separation between your well and your septic. That's not always possible on certain properties on Shelter Island, so they do the best fit. And, so it's an improvement no matter what happens. In any case, the county, if you recall this November, there was a referendum that was passed, and the main purpose of it was to give a renewable funding source for the county grant program. And luckily it did pass, and it's sort of also, I think that was the legislation that helped relax a little bit of the criteria and how this committee can help people on Shelter Island. And also the other towns that have the same committees. I think it's East Hampton and Southampton have it. I don't think Southold has one.
That's correct.
A WQI. Anyway, so to date, the program has been pretty successful. There have been 100 approved grants given on Shelter Island for voluntary septic upgrades. The voluntary is an important term here because if it's a mandated installation, like you were going to have to add, or not have to, but decided you were going to add on to your house and add more bedrooms and increase the design flow of the piece of property, Suffolk County would mandate you to upgrade your system in many cases. Shelter Island, for its part, sort of even preceded the county and said that if you were going to do such a upgrade, and have an addition on your house, you would have to put an IA system in. Where the county for a while was not on board. They would just say you had to upgrade your conventional system. But Shelter Island was ahead of that curve and was instrumental in having new homes and major renovations have to use IA systems. So those instances don't qualify for a town grant. If the property has been improved and you were just putting an addition on, you would qualify for the state and the county grant. In any case, if it's a new piece of property that's undeveloped, I don't believe there's a grant available for that. In any case, the new county grant is 15,000 base, which I just found out, and a 5,000 incentive for putting in a pressurized shallow drain field, and the state is still remaining at 10,000. So if you add all this up, it's not a bad amount of help that you would be getting if you decided to install an IA system. Having said that, nothing is easy. We don't want to sugarcoat, that putting an IA system is a slam dunk and, you won't have any issues. There's also, things that you won't even know about until you get into the whole project and, you have a design professional, might, after their conference with the health department say, oh, well, you're going to have to reroute, the piping in your house because your septic is going to end up on the other side of your property. So there's certain things that happen that sometimes are unforeseen. Sometimes it just goes very smoothly and it goes in with no problem, and it's sort of a swapping out your existing septic tank and you're done. But other times it can be more daunting and just extra work. So I think the grant would cover a good portion of this installation.
So James, we were talking about grants, et cetera, but we haven't started at the beginning, which is, what do these things cost?
Well, I was just about to say, the original, guesstimate for them was, around 35,000. I think they're more, the retrofit ones are probably up in the 45,000 range now. I see Meg is here. Meg, if you're not aware, is involved with Shelter Island Sand and Gravel. They are installers of IA systems. And if you happen to choose them, we don't recommend any one company. She's one of the best resources I know about information regarding design and installation of these systems.
Well, the reason I asked the question is obviously what people want to know is what's the out-of-pocket expense, right? You get these grants, but how much am I really spending on something like this?
I'd say that you're probably going to spend, maybe $5,000 or $10,000 more than the grant. If you had to move your well and you had to do this and you had to do that, you could end up spending that much more. If the design gets to be more involved, you might, the base that they guesstimate for the engineering fees is $2,500. If you get into an involved situation, it could be more than 2,500. But the benefit, is tangible. I mean, nothing changes overnight. I mean, Shelter Island's water, has, gotten to a point where there's, this nitrogen in the middle of the island, and, bays and creeks are suffering from nitrogen problems. So it didn't happen overnight, and the fix doesn't happen overnight. But every IA system that goes in is important, in its own right. Most important, are areas where there's a big lens of water, like in the center here. That's where a lot of or most of the drinking water from Shelter Island comes from, is in the middle of the island. It's also very important in the tidal estuary areas, creeks, harbors, where you're discharging right into those closed bodies of water. That's an important place to stop that. The nitrogen that, hurts shellfish and, spawning fish. I suppose, and I'm not a scientist, so if you were to choose, somebody out in, along Shelter Island Sound discharging into the, outside waters, that probably isn't as important, because the tidal flow there, is washing stuff faster than.
Can I just,
Sure can.
when you finish, and then I want to build on his question.
Sure.
Cost.
Anyway,
That's, each site is unique and different and cost differently. In terms of, I know we've heard of where, okay, here's, truckload of sand number 3, because they had to dig something out or fill something in. And not all of our applications pay the maximum. In other words, if we've got $12,000, we're authorizing, actually, we recommend to the town board that give the person, write the check for them, where it's 8,000-10,000. So my assumption at that point is that that there is some situations where it's a quote unquote easy install, where it may not have any out-of-pocket expense. It seems that there are most of the applications in construction are unique and have some sort of a thing that that clicks up and makes it more expensive. But there are some where, again, we don't pay the max, which to me would say that the out-of-pocket might be more like a little landscaping, where what we don't replace fine giant trees from we just provide down to your basic. You have lawn where you used to have lawn. So
Right, and you're not moving big trees or cutting trees
No.
down to put these systems in.
No, I
Just a
mean,
question.
the cutting the trees down, that might get covered, taking something out of the way to do the thing. Because, like, oh my goodness, my property is, I have this system over here, but it's too close to the well, and it's, it's in the 100-foot line, and I have the ability to bring it back beyond, the regulated area. But there are trees there. Taking the trees down would probably be covered. Putting trees back wouldn't be covered. The rough grade, topsoil, and seeding is covered. But, your prize rhododendron wouldn't be covered. The piping in your house is covered. The electric, upgrade, not changing your whole service, but, whatever you have to do to get power to the unit is covered. Any other plumbing stuff is generally covered if it has to do with making that IA system work in its, where it's installed. That stuff is covered. And then, of course, the actual system itself and the engineering costs.
and section
Okay.
2, on the WQI website, section 2, that lists, a list of, here's what we cover, here's what we don't cover. And so that if anybody's thinking about, what does this mean in terms of what am I going to be reimbursed for? That should be,
That's in there.
knock on wood, and if you guys in your experiences, maybe talking with people that have done this in your areas, getting, how do I say this? Finding out, if there were issues where there are gaps in what we're listing as approved or not approved. If it's not on there, people obviously don't know whether or not it's going to work. That could be something that experience now over the past, it's
8 years,
8 years, that we'd,
not that I'm counting.
we probably haven't touched that very much in terms of modifications to the procedures.
Let's just hear what Meg is wanting to say. Meg?
Hi, I'm going to try to turn my video on, but I'm in Mexico. I don't know if I'm going to have good bandwidth. Let's see. Hello. So to kind of add to
Nice
the
backdrop.
question about cost. Thanks. I took that from the front yard. To add to the cost question, it completely depends on the site and the site location and what you're trying to do. Some systems can be in the low 20s if you're just replacing your septic tank with an IA system and you're just literally swapping one tank out for another, and you can reuse your existing leaching. You can reuse the pipe that leads the house. That can be a low $20,000 system. Then you have some sites where you have wetlands, you have pressurized shallow drain fields, you have far more complicated distance to groundwater. Those sites can be more expensive. They can run up to 35, 40,000 if you have to bring the grade up in order to get distance to groundwater. Also, when you go through the DEC permitting, you have to go through the health department permitting. Those things all do add up. So it really depends on your specific site conditions. So some systems are more complicated than others to install. That's really the whole, financial side of it. When you're applying for the grants, a part of the county state grant process is to give you essentially a financial breakdown of what you should expect your out-of-pocket expense to be. So they give you a breakdown that shows you the estimate from whoever your installer is, and the county has a list of certified installers on the website, so you can pick anyone from that list. If the person you want to use is not on that list, they will not issue the grant money for that installer. So I always recommend that you go through the list. It also has price estimates for every installer, and they're not very accurate. It's like bare bones numbers, so they don't reflect your specific site conditions until you have an engineer do the design work and give that to someone to quote for you. But the county has a pretty good resource of everybody who does installations, what the estimated costs are, along with the maintenance costs and things of that nature. Even if you just want a rough idea of what you're able to do on your site, if you have old surveys and things, you can bring those to an engineer and they can give you some kind of idea of how complicated your project would be. But yeah, it really depends on site conditions. And if the health department forces you to move your system because you are non-compliant and you can't use a best fit because you're doing some other renovation in the house that, triggers you having to upgrade your system, then you may have to move trees, you may have to do that kind of thing. Tree removal is included in the county and state grant as well as the town grant if that tree removal is because you're installing a septic system, not because you're just doing landscaping. It has to be in conflict with the location of the new system. So there's a lot of nuance to it and a lot of things that can get complicated, but it's very doable. The county's streamlining their whole process, so the entire thing can be done online now. They've eliminated the bonus for pressurized shallow drain fields and just made it one $15,000 grant from the county. And it's still $10,000 grant from the state. So now you get $25,000 combined from county and state, and it's one application. And that application is on their website, reclaimourwater.info. You can do it all yourself. Now there's a whole portal. You create a login, you upload all your own information. You can do, there's a whole bunch of stuff that's required, but you have to have your deed, your most recent property tax bill, your homeowner's insurance declaration page, your certificate of occupancy for that house, not for like additions like decks, but for the structure itself. And if you want to apply for a low to moderate income incentive, you just upload your most recent tax bill. Tax return. And then that starts you in the whole process. If your system is failing or collapsing, you take pictures of the hole in the ground, the ponding in the yard, whatever that collapse could be, or you can have someone come and pump out your system and take pictures and show that it's not made out of cement and precast. It's maybe bricks or cement blocks that are just put in a circle. Those systems still get expedited by the county and state because they're considered failed systems because they're unsafe. So those systems go higher in the queue, so you get your grant monies faster. And when you apply for the county and state grant, that waives your application fee for the health department for the wastewater side of your application. So all of the engineering work, when you submit that to the health department, there's typically a $750 fee for that application. But if you're applying for the grants, they will waive that fee. So that's another kind of little order of operations thing. You want to apply for the grants before you pay for an engineer to do all your engineering. That way you can get that discount. Yeah, that's kind of it for now. And then as new things come up, I'll chime in.
Following up on what you said and something Meg said, I think one of the other costs people want to know is, after I do all of this, what kind of maintenance is involved prospectively? I know you referenced it a bit, Meg, but I've heard a real wide variety on that.
Well, it's included in the price for the first 3 years of maintenance. Then going forward, you enter into a contract with generally the installer, and it's around, I think it's around $1,500 for the 3 years. Is that right, Meg?
Yeah, it recently changed a little bit. So it used to be like $300 a year, and it's a mandatory 3-year contract. The county wants a 3-year contract. And so recently it's changed because the county now wants us to include a pump out in all the maintenance. It used to be that the homeowner would have to pay for pump outs separately, but then people were refusing to do them. And if you're not doing them when they're necessary, then the system doesn't work as efficiently and you're not getting the benefit of the system. So the county is requiring that maintenance contractors add the pump out to the maintenance process. So it's kind of all encompassed in the package now. So most maintenance costs went up to $1,200 for 3 years. So it's not $1,200 a year, it's $1,200 divided by 3 years. Maintenance is twice a year. It's every 6 months. So we typically do, just for us, once in the spring and once in the fall. And whenever pump outs are required, we just automatically schedule them and do them. And it's not an added expense to the homeowner anymore because it's part of that maintenance contract.
Doug, did you have?
Yeah, I had another question, which was, is there any advantage, economic advantage, maybe process advantage to bundling systems so that
I was
if
gonna,
neighbors wanted to get together and say, well, let's do our street, let's do our neighborhood, is there?
well, I was gonna say that perhaps there is an economy of scale. Perhaps Meg would have a good weigh in on this, but I would think that, getting a group of people in one area together and using, not only this committee, Jessica as a resource. Jessica is our clerk, but if you're having an issue, you reach out to us. Everything is pretty much on the town website, under the WQI committee. But as I say, when you first look at it, it's like, oh boy, it's a little overwhelming, but as you really look at it, it's not that crazy, I mean, but if there are.
I guess I would say, James, is it's way more expensive. In my experience, I'm going through this myself, and I haven't put a shovel in the ground. I haven't done anything yet. And I'm at 68.75 in various fees for survey, engineering, then the clearing of the existing drainage fields so that it can be inspected and certified for reuse. So I'm just saying, looking at it from just a regular consumer who's being compelled to do this because of an addition to my home, there's a lot of money here, that no one has got a good figure on, and I'm kind of walking down, feeling my way down a dark hallway with no lights on. And so when I went to the building department to sit down and say, well, what are the criteria? Have you got the criteria that compels me to put one of these systems in on a sheet of paper? That's a reasonable request from a citizen. The answer is no.
Well,
It all depends. So I'm just saying that while this is well-intentioned, it's not transparent.
Well, it's not, it wasn't contrived to be non-transparent. It's confusing. I think non-transparency is a bad word for this. I think it's confusing.
I would concur. It's
I
definitely
think,
confusing.
the building department, for its part, if you increase the square footage, the conditioned square footage of your house by more than 25%, regardless of what it is, you could have a giant kitchen. Doesn't matter. You're gonna not be eligible for a town grant. If you're adding bedrooms to your existing home, you're not eligible for a grant. If you were just gonna add in a kitchen addition and, it was under 25% of the existing square footage, you would be eligible for a town grant. In all those cases, you're eligible for the state and the county grant.
Yes, that I understand.
For the town, when you get into a situation where you're increasing the use of water and effluent discharge on a piece of property by increasing the number of people you can put in your house, because that they count it, it's maybe not an exact science, but they're looking at it, oh, you're adding a bedroom, you're adding, 2 bedrooms or whatever, that's really the trigger that, precludes you from getting a town grant.
Well, I'm just asking these questions because I live in Silver Beach, and water quality and quantity is a issue for us,
Sure is.
as it is in Menantic Peninsula.
Yep.
And we have lots of folks, some of whom are on this call now, who are very concerned about water quality and so are very interested in this topic. And that's what prompted my question about bundling.
Well, I think bundling we've not been able to get anybody to come to us with this critical mass of applicants in an area. That's sort of why we've asked you here to help disseminate, information and, reasons to do it. In Silver Beach, you're not so much affecting the quality of your water that you're drinking. You're probably affecting more how things are in the harbor and the creeks. But it's all worthwhile and good to do it. I would encourage, if there's a group of people, we're happy to meet with them, and try to help them. I mean, I would think if, let's say, if they did pick Shelter Island Sand and Gravel, I mean, Meg would certainly meet with them. We're here to try and help. It's not always straightforward. I mean, if you have a house that was built in 1995, or, certainly no older than 1980, you would have what they call an RO number that the health department has approved the system for your house, and they've designed it so, or approved it so that your greatest separation between your septic and your well is on your piece of property. And those sort of situations could be the kind where Meg is saying, oh, you just sort of plug and play. You take out the septic tank and you put in the IA system and you reuse the leaching pools. Having said that, to touch base on, a topic about pressurized shallow drain fields, on Shelter Island, it would be great if everybody could put them in. Unfortunately, there's not space many times to do that. But where you can, you just think about it. There's just more stuff between what you're putting into the ground and what you're drinking, and there's more of the ability to filter out even more than just nitrogen. And, there's chemicals and stuff that it can filter out much better than putting it into a leaching pool. It's sort of down almost in your water table. And having it just go into the aquifer. So where possible, we try to, say, hey, wouldn't it be great to put one of these in? And sometimes you have to, because you're too close to water as it is, and somebody on Montclair Peninsula, for instance, they almost have to do it, or some sort of galley system. So, again, as Greg was saying, and Meg corroborated, there's specific situations where, it's not all this, it's just not the same. Things can change from one property to another, and sometimes be more expensive, sometimes not.
I mean, Doug's asked that, to expand and maybe just to clarify in my own mind here, in terms of things that you've identified that have tripped up the putting in systems, the cost to install and the cost for maintenance problem, something that needs to be addressed. For myself, the suppliers that are approved on the list from the county, I've tried to find that damn list, and it's in a strange place. That when I can't personally find it, and now I want to, because obviously people have needed them. What do we cover in installation and to rehabilitate a backyard? Maybe that needs to be clarified better.
I would imagine so, because if you did a pressurized shallow drain field, that would require you to really disturb a lot of turf. Let's say you had turf on your property.
Yes. I mean,
You'd want to,
But the end result would be a nice green place.
well, of course, and passive irrigation, I suppose.
Right.
But, that would be,
it's
lot of
also,
work.
it's another level of reduction of nitrates. I mean, if
Yeah.
in a standard leaching pool, you start going in, the estimate is always 70 grams per 70. It's 70 milligrams
per liter.
per liter. And then, the county has only approved units that can do less than 19. But if that's going in then into a pressurized shallow drain field, it'll half or more reduce the nitrates.
Is that
And
because
other-
it's got more
Bacteria are working on it.
sediment below it through which the
Right,
water.
because,
Bacteria, it's bacteria.
shallow is the optimum word, then that gives you just much more stuff between it and where this effluent's going. Whether it be into the tidal wetlands or into the aquifer.
I think then
Meg has her hand up again.
then maybe she was going to discuss a little bit on this county regulation on 3 years maintenance. This is the first time I've been aware that a pump out every 3 years.
That's new.
Yeah, that's new. That's a new one, and it's not reflected in any of our documentation.
I mean,
I know
there
of.
was some talk that it would have to, eventually that sediment tank would have to be pumped out. And for the record, I mean, every 5 years you should pump your conventional one out. Nobody does because out of sight, out of mind. Nobody thinks about their septic system until it's bubbling up in their backyard.
Yeah, well, my septic system is only 20 years old, and it's stamped by the county for
Yeah.
up to 6 bedrooms.
Yep.
Yet, because I'm adding a bedroom to a 3-bedroom dwelling, there we have it.
Right. That's the problem. In any case,
Meg.
Meg,
I forgot what I was going to say because you guys changed the topic, but Doug, to your comment about bundling systems, like if you had a whole bunch of neighbors who were right next to each other or neighbors kind of in a cluster, you could probably get like engineering to be done together on all those systems because you have to share similar information. You have to share well information, septic
Yeah.
siting information.
Yeah.
So you could cluster that. And then if you can get the timing where all of those grants are approved through the health department at around the same time with the permits approved around the same time, then you could probably get a deal to cluster and install those systems around the same time as well. It's just a lot of coordination, and every site is so very different and specific that it could get very complicated trying to get all the timing to work together. But I'm sure that there's definitely aspects of it that you could bundle together and get a deal. You just
Yeah,
have to.
I was just going to say, I don't know that we have neighbors that would be interested in bundling, but again, with so many people interested in the quality and quantity of their water in Silver Beach, that is a possibility. Another question is, these grants, when do they get paid relative to the
well,
work being
that's
done?
an interesting question. Shelter Island pays, or, the current regulation is they pay when you get the so-called green stamp. When you get your system approved, it's a red stamp on your survey. When everything is done and, meets muster of the health department, then you get the green stamp. There is an interim thing that, we as a committee have been scratching our heads a lot, as we can see. that to try to make this easier and more palatable to people. There are people, that get stuck in this well problem, like they have something wrong with their water. And, the county sort of tortures them until they get treatment, and then you have to get a covenant on your deed and this and that, and it could drag the green stamp part of this out forever. We made a recommendation to the town board, which hasn't been completely weighed on yet. I don't think it's a dead issue, but it may be, that you accept the letter from the county's inspection, which, the county does and the state does to get their grants paid. That when the county comes out and inspects your septic,
Installs, newly installed.
the newly installed thing, and say it meets muster, then those grants get paid. And we were saying, can Shelter Island do this? We were at a meeting where other towns were saying that they were doing it that way. In the case where if you had a well problem, you at least could get your septic portion of it paid, and then deal with the well and get your final green stamp. And if you had, money that was granted to move a well, let's say, that's when you get that portion of the money. But there's been some pushback. The building department, I think that's going to make their life more difficult. I don't agree, but there's some issue there. So, but we're trying, and suggestions are always welcome, how to make it easier to do this. So, we've opened this dialogue, so feel free anytime. And our meetings are all open. It's usually the first Thursday in the month is the regular meeting. If a second meeting is required, it's the third Thursday generally. So anyway, so we're there. We're happy to hear and have people come to the meetings and tell us what we could do better, which is a lot probably.
We've made a number of changes to the process as the need arises and there's a circumstance that wasn't anticipated in the process or it's brand new. So we'll go in and make a recommendation to the town board to amend the process. And we've gotten a bunch of changes made that way as the uniqueness of each one hits us. So that's the goal. Our goal is to get as many of these things in the ground as is reasonably possible. In addition to the other projects that we understand.
So, that brings us, if nobody has any questions about, Meg does. Meg?
I can just clarify the way the money works a little bit. So it's kind of like there are waves of funding. So initially, to get your project kicked off, it's the homeowner's responsibility to pay the engineer to do the design work. So that comes out of the homeowner's pocket. That money can later be reimbursed with the town grant, but there is that upfront out-of-pocket cost. The installation, when that happens, the county and the state grant pay the installer directly. So whatever the value of your county and state grants are, you can deduct that from the total cost of your out-of-pocket because that goes directly to the installer without the homeowner having to come up with that monies. And then any of the remaining balance after the county and state grant have paid are the homeowner's responsibility to pay, because the town's reimbursement policy says that you have to show paid in full invoices to get your money back from the town. So there's kind of a homeowner pays, then the county and state pays, and then the homeowner pays. And then you take all of your receipts and your list of expenses and you give them to the town, and the town reimburses you up to the value of your grant. So there is out-of-pocket expense at different parts of the process, but hopefully in the end, that all comes back to you. There is a timing issue between when the installation happens, the county and the state grant pay the installer, and then the time it takes for the county to process all the paperwork and issue that green stamp, which is really the final release that the town needs to pay out your grant. So there is a lag time, which can be several months, between when the work is done and the county and the state pay and when the town pays. And so in that time period, the homeowner will have out-of-pocket expenses. So that's just something to be aware of. But the county did partner with CDCLI, and they have a low interest bridge loan to help people who need extra financing to help bridge the gap for any out-of-pocket expense. It's a low rate. I can't remember if it's 2% or something like that, but I know we've
That's
had
on the
one.
website too.
Yeah. But it's kind of a sandwich of funding, so it can be tricky.
Yep.
Any other IA questions? So, this committee, the focus has been on these installations of IA systems, but, we are tasked, and our mandate goes far beyond that. And, there may be situations in your own communities, that deal with water quality that could be somehow remediated by some project, and these are the kind of things that we would love you guys to think about. I know there was some talk in Silver Beach about doing something about that brackish Pond.
Yeah, the East Brander tidal wetland.
You know, so there, you know, it's not, precedent has been set. I mean, you know, the homeowners groups, sort of beginning with Fresh Pond Neighbors, the Mananac Creek Keepers are another group that has gotten some funding from this committee. I think, you know, I think it's a great thing when homeowners groups, you know, get together themselves and kind of noodle on a problem that they have and try to come up with a proactive way of dealing with it. I think, you know, the municipality, I think, takes more notice of people trying to do work themselves and then asking for help than just somebody saying, we got this problem, can you fix it? You know, say, hey, we have a problem. We've been trying to work on it. You know, we've done this, that, and the other thing. You know, we would love to be able to get some additional funding to see it through. So I think it's a great thing when, you know, the residents of an area, you know, really become proactive in that way.
But just that being said, first of all, the town board from the start of the program had said your priority is septic system. You know, get our do what you can for the aquifer and also for the surrounding salt water. And as far as the other project types, the state was very, very concerned when they put this program into effect back in 2016, that the money was going to wind up being a part of the slush fund to balance out and level out the town's budgeting time. So they gave very specific, you can do this, or that, you know, and one of our roles is to say, okay, you've come in, you've asked for this project, and our role is to say, okay, with this list of things that we're allowed to fund, does it fit in there? And we've met a number of these that have worked, that where it was okay, we can justify this, and some.
Thank goodness things have been relaxed, because Greg takes us to task on a regular basis.
And that regulation, which was a list of like 7 different things that you had to work on. The state has now changed that regulation, the town law, and you know, on the state level, and they have established or are in the process of establishing a committee of 14 people who will look at, you know, if we get some.
Nowhere near established.
Nowhere near. They were supposed to have 90 days. They were supposed to have 90 days from the middle of December. So we'll give them another month. So be that as it may,
Anybody.
in another, if it works the way it's in another month or two, we'll be in a position where if somebody comes in and says, is this suitable for use for WQI funds? We would be charged to look at it, and if we couldn't see it, we would say, okay, group of 14, what do you guys think? And I use guys in the Sesame Street, you know, electric company's sense. And then they have their own lawyers as well. So there's this hierarchy that's been created in order to establish, rather than having this list of 7 and.
Well, I mean, I think, Greg, the good thing is this would preclude maybe having to go to the committee of 14, you know, because these things have been relaxed enough. I think we, as an advisory board, could make decisions with greater confidence. You know, and if we did have a question, we would go to the board of 14 or the.
Whether we would or not, I couldn't say.
Well, I don't know. We'll see.
But thus far, you've approved 100 of these disbursements, these $12,000 disbursements.
Correct. You know, and that is a, you know, we have a mechanism that each one doesn't have to go to a separate public hearing, you know, whereas other projects such as where we, you know, gave funds to do remediation work in Fresh Pond and work in the Mananac Creek area, they all have their own specific public hearing that they need to go to if we've recommended to the town that this is a project that we've sort of vetted and we think it's a good thing, then they, have a public hearing on it.
And so that's $1.2 million for those 100 disbursements that you've made at $12,000 a piece. So how much of the funds you have remaining after having dispersed that amount?
Well, we haven't dispersed all of it. We have 64 have been dispersed, 36 are not.
Yet.
We have total available funds for future projects is in the neighborhood of $2.9 million. That's after what's been encumbered. So we're anxious to find things that could be done in areas. So the creek keepers, the fresh pond thing, if Silver Beach came up with a thought about how remediation of that Brander Parkway pond could help them, or if there's, a runoff issue that you've seen that's a terrible thing in your community, either making a giant mess, for, stagnant water sitting there and seeping into the aquifer or running off into the bay or whatever.
We definitely have that on Brander. We have a large stretch of water that stands and gets frozen. It's been frozen for a week now with this weather.
Mm-hmm.
There are cones in the middle of Brander Parkway diverting traffic.
Well, it has to be tied into making the water better.
Okay.
But, it's not like.
Not paying for the risk, not paying for highway department
I got
issues.
pushback from Ken Lewis saying,
I'll
we
have to
can't do
I'll have to
that.
call Ken Lewis and tell him to get the ice out of there. But, things, like that, we could, be, a resource for the community. Then there are other more island-wide projects that we have funded that benefit, kind of the whole, population of Shelter Island. Through the Cornell Cooperative Extension, we've been funding their shellfish seeding program. And now they have, the oyster reef, we did the pilot project, and then we gave money to do the real deal. And they're doing one in Cockles Harbor, and then they're starting test things in West Neck
We hope so.
to get things like that. I mean, when you think that one oyster filters 50 gallons of water a day, it's probably worthwhile doing it. We've funded, at request of the Water Advisory Committee, we funded test wells. We've done, we helped the Presbyterian Church with their, water issue, because it was a resource that, the seniors used, and, Meals on Wheels and all that kind of stuff. So, I mean, there are many projects that we've sort of gotten involved in that, don't get much publicity as much as the IA systems. That, if you get this in your craw, maybe, maybe we do have something in our local community that could be fixed and make life better for everybody. So those are the kind of things, if you want to come to us and make a proposal, we welcome it. Right?
Absolutely.
Any other questions sort of about stuff like that? I mean, there's. Anyway, so, the net result of this is, I hope that, this meeting has just opened up a dialogue, where instead of just like, oh my God, close up the folder, I'm not going to look at this, it's too involved, or, this problem that's been bothering me, and it has to do with water, maybe there's a resolution that can be, arrived at, through some collaboration. So I think if we can just keep talking about stuff, you know, not one thing is going to fix the water problem. You know, there's going to be a myriad of things that are going to go, you know, that need to be done. And, you know, it may take some time. You know, as we saw, you know, ideas, you know, get launched and then they get, you know, vetted and maybe not so good. But, you know, at least people are talking about it. And, you know, then that's what we encourage. So we encourage people to come to these meetings, ask questions, come up with suggestions, and help us do better. Because like I said, you know, we didn't know much about this when we got involved in it. And it's still questionable. So anyway, if there are no more questions, I would say
You know,
thank you all for coming out on the winter night.
Thank you.
you went
Hopefully
2 minutes
spring comes
over
soon.
your hour. It went 2 minutes over his hour.
Sorry. You have, you know, 55 minutes to get to the game. Thank you all, in person and on the screen.